Hello and welcome to the adequately titled Mr. Chapple's Handcrafted podcast. We are here today on end of season 1, episode 10, if you'd believe that. As always, I want to point out that for the entire season, we have been sponsored by the wonderful Close Call Creative, your one-stop shop for creative direction and digital media solutions. If you need anything, go give them a shout. This is also the point where I beg and I plead and I ask you very kindly to take a little bit of time, press the subscribe button on the YouTube channel, press follow on Spotify, and help me have the retirement I always wanted, which is not going to happen. But hey, we're having fun. With that, I want to turn it over to my guest today, the absolutely fantastic Cara Collins. You will know her primarily as the voice of the band Cairo Station, and most recently as although she's getting back to producing some of her own music, she's now currently working with the promotion company NuMuze. With that, Cara, thank you for being on the show. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm Cara. My kind of first experience in the music industry was always as a member of an audience. I have a passion, even still, for going and attending gigs, especially kind of the local artists I do get the pleasure of seeing. It's how I met some of my longtime friends now, and then it's also how I was able to get into my first band, which was Cairo Station. Just over a year, I think I performed with them, and it was absolutely fantastic. I have always written my own music, created my own music, attempted to play guitar. So a lot of my creative direction with that was creating a lot of songs, rewriting songs, and yeah, it really gave me like a platform to be able to do that. I After that band, I have continued making my own music, creating my own music, and then now I am a content writer for the promotion company based in Belfast called NuMuze, which we are very, very passionate about uplifting local artists of the entirety of Ireland. And I normally I'm working a lot with the artists, so I do a lot of interviewing. I write my own long form pieces as well, so just allows me to now have a voice in something that is in the backside of the music industry instead of being on the stage. But I enjoy both equally as much. So
Excellent. So, you've seen the format of this. We want to do a little bit about your past, your present, your future. So with that, can we go right back to like your origins and backstory? So what was the musical environment in your home growing up? Was music everywhere, or did you have to find it on your own?
no, not at all. Music was very much at the foreground of 90% of my childhood. So my beautiful Nanny Lucy, God rest her, she was a jazz singer. So she actually used to perform in the Ulster Sports Club, which is a venue that I have now had the pleasure of being able to play. So she was classically trained. She had the most beautiful voice, but just had a real passion for music. And then my dad as well, complete and utter music maniac. He absolutely loves music. I was raised on ska, so he's a big fan of the Specials, the Selector, the Beat, Manchester. So we always listen to a lot of the Jam, the Stone Roses, Oasis, and throughout that has now, I think, really shaped how I listen to music, because he really did have such a drive for music and had such a drive to go and attend gigs, and was a real fiend for live music, which was something that I didn't really discover until later life, that we had that right there in Belfast. So I have attended so many gigs with my dad. He is my favourite gig partner to go with ever. He is always that one madman in the crowd who's just always giving it stock, singing where he can, just giving everything that he can to it. And it's not even that it comes from a form of he wants people to see him or he wants to be like spot or something like that. It's just his genuine ingrown attitude kind of. So yeah, music completely surrounded us as children. We were raised playing instruments where we could. I grew up spending my entirety of my like secondary school career playing guitar, and I was even in a small kind of garage band, or two or three of them actually. But always kind of, as much as I am a really big enjoyer of kind of watching music and listening to music, it was really drilled into us as kids that like we could do it ourselves and we can do it ourselves. So we always were kind of making whatever type of music we can work.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to move on, like, to like, when did you start making music yourself, and how, as somebody with zero musical ability, though I have in my youth tried, I never managed to get a successful tune, because I'm completely tone deaf. So I'm always fascinated to hear from people like taking that step from consuming music and appreciating it to actually performing it. When did that happen for you, and how did it feel?
Yeah, it's very strange. I know a lot of for a lot of musicians it comes very naturally to them with songs and writing and that kind of stuff. And don't get me wrong, it really did for myself as well. I've been writing since forever, since as long as I can remember. But a lot of it has been kind of ingrained in the fact that I'm a music major. Well, I'm an English major, so I recently graduated with a degree in English literature, and I think that those two things are very closely intertwined in my mind in the way that I kind of go about music and my attitude towards it. Because I love art in the form of words, and I love art in the form of being able to read and to listen to other people's thoughts. And it was for me quite a lot of that. So I usually it would came about as like a poem almost, and there was lyrics in my head, or there was a couple words in my head, and they'd be written on a piece of paper. And I have always tried to have a notebook for like eras of my life of different songs for that like era. So I've had like maybe 12, 13 of them now just completely filled with music. I'm filled with my own things, and my notes app takes up too much of my storage because of little things that'll just come about when I'm walking about the street, and then I kind of look like a crazy person standing in the middle of the street with my phone speaking or singing into it. But um it kind of comes to me in like a fleetingness almost. So a lot of the times I feel that that's pretty natural for musicians, is that music comes from a lot of emotion, and it comes from happy emotions, but it also can be driven quite a lot by those negative emotions. And for me personally, it really helps me to process things that are going on in my life in maybe ways that I don't even realize that I think about it until it's on a piece of paper. Um, and it's weird because to me, music is so vulnerable and so honest, because you're picking apart the most raw moments that have ever happened to you, and then placing them in the form of a metaphor, or in the form of kind of a rhyming couplet or whatever, onto a song, and then asking everyone to listen to it and hopefully to enjoy it. But um music for me has just always just came out in that way, that it's been almost like a poetry that's live, or that has a backing band. And I think that that's the way that I've always gone about it, and I always kind of will go about it, because it comes to me like that before I even have realized. It's almost like a subconscious kind of feeling in a way.
I love that, and I think you and I have discussed this before, that because like my first degree is partly in English literature, and I've always had that love of well, poetry first, but and then later the understanding that, sung poetry is, the songs that are around us. My
Hmm.
final year's dissertation for my degree in English literature was on 3 or 4 consecutive albums from Bob Dylan, and I when I was an undergraduate, I was a published poet, and I love that I never got to the place where you could take something that I wrote and actually sing it.
Yeah.
There's a difference there, but I love, and what I'm hearing from a lot of people that are studying English now is that there's a greater acceptance within academic circles of song lyrics as actual literature, as poetry. Dylan getting the Nobel Prize for literature didn't hurt that case. I've just been making that case for like 30 years beforehand. So obviously, books and poetry inspire your own songwriting process. Anything in particular recently that's that you would say, look, this really inspired me. It's I've written something, or it's given me ideas. What should we be reading, or based on that?
Yeah. Um, I, for my entirety of my teen years and even after that now, have always been such a huge enjoyer of Adriana Linker and of Big Thief and the music that they create, because quite a lot of it is so poetic and almost has this layer of whimsiness to it that is just so utterly heart-wrenching. And she did a songwriting course about, I think it was last year, but she is kind of continuously doing them. And a lot of the teachings throughout that were based in how you write music and how we go about putting lyrics and putting things on a page. And quite a lot of the time, I think it's quite a relatable thing for a lot of artists, is that you almost have this kind of sense of competitiveness with yourself, that each song has to kind of be better than the last, or each lyric has to be more complex or more dynamic or gripping than the rest of them. And a lot of the teachings from that course were based on taking that away, and instead of doing the most complex like metaphors of all time, you instead just write, and you just put the most simple kind of lyrics on a page. And she uses this metaphor of a river, that just let it flow and keep it going and keep it going. And when it stops, or when it kind of meanders, that's when you let the song finish. And I think it's weird, because I'd never really thought of my music like that, or my writing like that. Because a lot of the time I just get caught up in it all, and I do try to make it complex, and I'm thinking about what other people would think of it, or what they would think of it. But when you listen to Big Thief and when I listen to Adriana Lenker, so many of the lyrics that they use are so simple, and there's no really mad complexities to it, and almost kind of so unique in a way where I don't relate to anything that they are putting out there in their music, but I kind of, in a way, you almost kind of then end up morphing that and molding that to fit what it means in your head, which I think is one of the joys of music. And they write poetry, and they write different types of kind of media in that way. And I don't know, I think that just like having poetry like that is just so beautiful. But a lot of my favorite books have very much inspired why I write and how I write as well. My favorite book is actually kind of a strange one. It's called House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland, and it's a book. It's very dark, kind of almost kind of mythical book about, it focuses on touches on changelings and missing people and murder and that kind of stuff. But the way that Crystal Sutherland writes in that book is so vivid, and it's almost so colorful in your mind. And I love kind of digital media. I love movies, and I love watching like YouTube and like kind of long form pieces. But there's something about visualizing a book so heavily in your mind, because it's not there to kind of be laid in front of you. And a lot of her writing is just so kind of grasping. You really do just get kind of thrown into this completely different world, and sometimes almost challenging when it does get to kind of serious points or kind of sensitive topics, because you feel like you're right there with them. And I remember reading that book and feeling such inspiration to just write in a way that is not only vivid for me, but vivid for anyone who was to ever listen to it. I have, like, my bookshelf is sitting right next to me right now, and my room is covered in books. I'm absolutely destroyed by books. I'm a really big fan of drama as well. So one of the most standout pieces, and I studied it for my A level, um, in English was A Streetcar Named Desire, and we, as much as we did watch the film and the live performances of it after, our English teacher made us act out the scenes in class and really feel it and visualize it for ourselves. And there was points of studying that book where I think I was starting to kind of internalize Blanche's madness in a way. And we made all my friends at the time were also studying in that class, and we made like a playlist that really kind of described what it was like to be Blanche Dubois or to be Stella. I think that things like that really help with creating music, because you do need to be picky about why you put something a different way and why things change and why you're doing this verse here and then that chorus or a bridge or leaving a bridge out. So that kind of having that direction really helped with a lot of my songwriting, because it made me remember that in art, everything is deliberate. Even if it's not deliberate, you haven't consciously done it, everything is deliberate.
Wow, that's a really comprehensive answer. You touched on everything. Drama, poetry,
Yeah.
novels, films, you know, anything else, like, it's like favorite tap dancers. I don't know. Um, so the one thing in terms of influence that I'd love to ask that's kind of tangential to that, are there artists, like we've spoken about kind of major artists that have been influential to you? Are there local artists that
100%. I think when you are a musician locally, it's really hard not to kind of compare yourselves in a way to each other. But one thing that I've noticed from being in this scene for so long and being friends with so many people of the scene is that Belfast has such a beautiful, unique, uplifting atmosphere, in the form where everyone is so kind to each other and so kind of hopeful that another person will do well. And because of that, I almost have looked around me and seen, instead of something that would be maybe like partially envious, it's more just like I am so proud that they're doing that. And you do subconsciously pick up on little things. Like one of, I think, the best songwriters of our generation, and he is thankfully a really close friend of mine, is Charlie Hanlon. He's part of the reason that I became into the scene at all, because I saw a poster of his, and I never had truly realised when I was 17 that there were people who were going out and who were my age, who were going and gigging in Belfast and with bands and playing in bars. And he was part of the reason I met everyone in the first place. If it wasn't for Charlie, I never would have really stumbled as early as I did into it all. But he has such a beautiful way with lyrics, and the way that he does write is so kind of touching in a way. It's so difficult to listen to his music and to not just be fueled by emotion, because so many of the things that he says in his songs and so many of the ways that he does play his music is so just originally Charlie. It's just so him, and that's something that I think that has really stood out to me as him as a songwriter. He just writes and he writes and he writes, and that boy is never done making music. He is so, it just comes to him, and he is such a talented musician in so many ways. He's a great voice, he is a great drummer, a great guitarist, but there's something so special about the way that he writes music and the music that he does write that I think really stands out to me. Another close friend of mine, Eva Rowan from The Thing Is, her confidence and just her whimsy and pure love to be on a stage is something that has really, really stood out to me always. I remember watching her before we played together one time in the Empire about 2 years ago, and I just remember her coming out with this gorgeous outfit on and getting up, doing the sound check, and then when it came to her performance, I was just so captivated by her in so many ways. And kind of a side note, but we've both been told quite a lot that we are doppelgangers, and I've had people come up to me thinking that I'm Eva from the Thing Is, and every single time that happens, I've started saying yes, because I'm so flattered that people think that I look like Eva Rowan. But her attitude towards music is so just, it's almost politically charged, and I think that as a musician from Belfast is so important. They recently released a song Logic, and um, just everything about that song is so made and curated from the women in that band's Bella as well, Bella Bryson, um, their opinions and their thoughts and how they have been victimized in a scene that you should never feel like that. And they put that into their music and they released it with this lovely long statement on just the disgusting attitudes of men that unfortunately have been plaguing Belfast at the moment. And I think something like that has really helped me with my own music and songwriting and how I go about music, because it just reminds me that music is kind of politically charged always, and it should be a platform for you to be able to talk about your opinions and your thoughts and your views, and you should never hurt another person with that, any of those things. But the way that they have done it is so important, I think, to see, and just to see two strong women go up on stage and absolutely shred and just run about the stage with each other and just have fun is something that has been really, really important to me. Another Monday's Child girls, they're three of them are sisters, and uh, just they are just rock stars, just absolute rock stars. They're so talented. They put so much of themselves into their music and into their live performance, and every time that I do get the pleasure of seeing them, I'm equally more and more awed every single time. They are just such a talented group of girls, but the thing that stands out to me the most, even before how amazing that they are, is just their pride and their joy of each other, and how every time that they get up on stage, they give it their absolute all, and you can see that they are enjoying themselves, they are having fun, and people forget that music is meant to be fun. You're meant to get up on that stage and come back off it again and go, can't believe that's over. When's our next gig? And I think that that's something you can see with them so strongly. And they've unfortunately been taken away to London now. But I hope that they get every succession in London, because we need to see more strong, cool girls on stage. Because when I was 16 and I was watching people get up on stage, like the Pretty Reckless, my favorite band of all time is Paramore, when you see someone up on stage at such a young age, or even now, it does set in that realization of, I can do this is possible for me. And we need just more of that representation of just these chicks that are going up on stage and just absolutely killing it and enjoying it and having a good time. And yeah, I think that that really has changed my whole opinion on music, and even just as a female artist in Belfast as well. So yeah.
So you've picked three fantastic artists. I've filmed them all. I know Charlie pretty well. I don't know the folks in The Thing Is or Monday's Child
Yeah.
nearly as well as I'd like.
Yeah.
But there's something I just kind of want to circle back on, because you talked about the positivity of the Belfast scene, and then
Yeah.
can we just dive into the darker part that, you talked about the I don't want to misquote you, but basically you talked about there being a lot of really nasty men, and of course it's always gonna be men, isn't it? Um, can we talk about that part of the scene?
Yeah,
Like
100%. Um, from starting NuMuze, I have graciously by Lewis given a lot of creative control in what I write about, and I'm a girl with a lot of opinions on things, and I'm quite uh loud about those opinions, and I always have been. And as much as it maybe has got me shtick in the past, I will never not be kind of loud and proud about my thoughts and opinions and things. And when I first went into the music scene, I kind of strayed away partially from the heavier music, because I love heavier music. I'm a big pop punk girl. I love hardcore. I love rock. I love alt rock. I love post punk. Um, but I think that there is a really sometimes negative male predominance in those scenes, and the issues don't arise with male predominance, because don't get me wrong, I was saying to you earlier, Robert, that I went to one of the best crowd shows I've ever been to, in Limelight recently, for a band called Knock Loose, and I had the best time. Me, my friend Hannah, and her sister Rachel went, so 3 girls, and I have never felt more supported, safe, uplifted, able to just do what I need to do in the mosh, get out again. If you fall, you're fine, you're safe, you're up, gonna be back up again. And it was a really positive kind of change in attitudes I'd seen, because I have been to shows before where people have been moshing, and there's always maybe 1 or 2 guys that are really into it, and it's good to be passionate about music, and it's good to be passionate, especially for music that is heavier, because it rattles your soul, it really goes through you. So to dance in those specific ways, two-stepping and crowd killing, it's natural to feel like that. However, locking eyes on the smallest woman in that crowd and deliberately running straight at her and flooring her is not how you do it. And there's so many issues with attitudes of men in our local scene, and this is not just applicable to the heavier scene, of feeling entitled to not just women's bodies but to other people's bodies, and feeling like they can push and shove, and even at gigs where maybe it's crowded and you're back to back with each other, and like standing right up against someone when there's space, or just having that sense of entitlement, is completely strips away the meaning and the positiveness of music in general. You're meant to go to be able to enjoy a live show, and we're all here for the same reason. We're all here because we either like this band, or because we've discovered this band, or we're trying to get into a new band. We're all here for the music, so why not just let that happen? And it's something that I've very much tried to speak about when I can, but I think that this is kind of a global issue, and especially with the state of Northern Ireland at the moment, and the state of femicide rates, and how high the level of unsafeness and walking about our streets and not feeling safe anymore is something that needs to be tackled completely front on. There's no point in kind of maybe brushing it aside, or just like having thoughts about it. If you have a platform, you should use it to be able to make people not only aware of these things, but to allow people to kind of think of it of how can I change this for myself. And I think that a lot of my experience in the Belfast music scene, especially as a woman, has been predominantly positive. I've had such beautiful memories created, and I've really enjoyed the time and the spaces that I've got to share with people. But it's just something that I unfortunately keep picking up and keep getting back to. And even bands locally kind of being not speaking when they should, and especially at shows, and if you see kind of someone in the crowd and you can see that they're in trouble, or you see that they're uncomfortable or unsafe, or they're being talked to, that's something they maybe don't want to, or maybe they're on a date and it hasn't gone so well, or their date's gotten drunk, or their friend's really drunk, or there's some random guy bothering them. We need to be able, as men and women, to stand up and make sure that music is a safe space for everybody, and that if you see that happening, you make someone aware, or you go up and you sort that issue out if you can, and you deem it safe to do so, because it's something like that that can maybe stop someone from ever going to a gig again. And it should never get to a point where people either don't feel welcome at a certain band's gigs, or they don't feel welcome being in a certain space because of the attitudes of other people. And music is meant to be listened to, it's meant to be enjoyed. There's no time and there's no space for attitudes that are demeaning or hurtful. There's just I have no time for it, and it's something that I'm glad that a lot of people have become aware of it recently, but there's definitely a good bit of work to be done.
Thank you for all that, and I just wanted to give you the space to talk about that as freely and without interruption, because and now this may come as a shock to you,
Mhm.
but at a gig, nobody wants me for my body. Um, um,
I
so
disagree with that. There's definitely someone.
well, maybe, somebody from like a research laboratory. But that aside, look, I'm a middle-aged guy. Um, at gigs, I am largely, unaware of these problems that women face. Like, I know that when I started filming acts, and especially women-fronted acts, there were a lot of people who were going, "Right, there's like, fat, middle-aged, beardy guy with a camera pointing at me. What's he up to?" Um, and at the time, I thought, "Well, oh, well, they just need to trust me." And then you go, "Well, you probably look like every other predator out there. You know, why would they want to trust you?" So, the first step of this for me has been about, winning people's trust, showing that
Mhm.
I'm worthy of trust. But there is that bigger thing that I have heard these stories of women having really shitty times at gigs because the drunk guy thinks that they deserve your time in terms of conversation, or hideous flirting, or inappropriate behavior of one kind or another. And like I said, it is something that is completely invisible to me.
Mhm.
um and I wanted to give you the space to talk about it, to educate me, educate anybody that's here, that's watching us. My question is, you know, should I'm gonna answer, like, if you see something horrible happening, yeah,
Mhm.
you've gotta step in. Problem is, I've
Yeah.
not seen any of it. Now, admittedly,
Yeah.
with the camera, I'm facing towards the band, but I think it's a message that has to go out there,
Yeah.
you know, and again, like, all of this, it can't be about, oh, telling women to be careful. It's like, we've gotta educate, the guys on the scene. Like,
Mhm.
don't be dicks. Like,
Yeah.
this, we're all here. We all paid to get in. We're enjoying this show. You do not get, show and a little bit of light sexual assault,
Yeah.
thrown in for free.
100%.
This is not what this is about, and we've all got to do better on this.
Yeah,
And I
100%.
I include myself in that.
Yeah. No, it's something that is unfortunately sometimes invisible. And a lot of the main issues, because don't get me wrong, there's people out there who have felt either neglected or kind of assaulted or abused or disgusted after a gig at someone's behavior. But quite a lot of the time, the things that I've picked up on and the things that I've felt as a woman are micro aggressions in a way, and it's small kind of repeated things that just are breaking the women in the scene down slower and slowly and slowly. And a lot of it does come from a root of misogyny, and it's hard to pinpoint it on anything but that, because that is what it is. And it does come from a sense of entitlement to people's time and to people's spaces. And again, exactly what you said, I'm completely and utterly sick of hearing people say, oh, like the first thing they ask is, what were you wearing? Or like, well, how were you acting? Were you drunk? Were you doing this? And why am I being put at the center of another person's behavior? That is not you it doesn't matter how you dress, it doesn't matter what you wear. Music is expression in a form. You're meant to go out and wear exactly what you feel comfortable in and be able to know that you're going to be safe. And if you aren't, that is nothing to do with the person, but is to do with the misogyny that is surrounding them. And a lot of it, the way to tackle that, it's not our job kind of to constantly have to almost look out and that kind of stuff. It just shouldn't be happening in the first place. And a lot of that, don't get me wrong, I've also seen some great things in the music scene. I remember being in sports one time and there was a guy who was kind of just being strange and following me and my friends about, no matter, we couldn't get rid of him. And there was an older man who was in the crowd and he stopped him in his tracks and basically just told him to leave, brought him to the bouncer and got him to leave. And it's things like that where you have seen what's happening, you have understood that we have tried to get out of this situation and can't, and you have helped. And it's nothing to do with being saved by the man or anything like that. It's more just when you're listening to music, you should be able to also support the people that are surrounding you, and the person who's behind you, and the person who's in front of you, and the mosh pit to your left, and the people standing still to your right. Doesn't matter what people are doing, you should always kind of be able to help other people in the crowd if you see that they're having a tough time. And we have got such a great community for that in Belfast, but I think it does come down to just tackling people's attitudes in general, and kind of making sure, because it's one thing that if you as a person don't do it, and if you have decided, like, I'm really going to educate myself and challenge myself, but a lot of it comes from the fact that these people are friends with people who they see are making comments or catcalling or kind of trying with girls who are just trying to enjoy their night. And you need to be able to clock your friends and to be able to attend to that as much as you do yourself. And you shouldn't want to see anyone doing that, and it's a difficult thing to do, to maybe tell your friend stop, but it's what only thing that is going to help change the attitude, and it's the only thing that's going to really help to combat what we are facing in the scene. And I'm fortunately surrounded by a fantastic group of lads who have never been anything other than encouraging, comforting, and a safety in a way. And I shouldn't have to only feel safe if I'm with them. You know what I mean? It should be something that is just there. You should just be able to go and to be safe. But it's making me happy seeing so much awareness and re-challenging of the thought processes that are behind this. And I think that at the moment there is small parts of progress, still small, but there is some form of progress being done and being helped. And there are spaces, and this as well doesn't even just apply to the likes of how women feel in the scene. It can apply to queer bodies within the scene. It can apply to trans bodies within the scene. It applies to people of any minority at all. And no one, no matter what you look like, no matter who you are, should ever have to feel victimized in somewhere that they enjoy. So I think that at the moment there's been so much encouragement to try and eradicate it in a way, and to make it seen that the Belfast music scene is not going to tolerate these things, and you are not welcome if you bring this negative attitude in with us here, because it's just not going to be tolerated. But I've thankfully seen that happen quite a lot recently. But I think that just as individuals, we need to be able to think, and we need to be able to challenge and push each other to do better in a way.
I'm just thinking of your story about the gentleman that, you know, stopped a guy and had him escorted out. I am essentially a coward at heart, and I would love to think that I would be that heroic
Mhm.
to step in a case like that. Um, I've never been tested in that way. I don't know how I'd react, but I do know that there have been a couple of times, and I've said to a number of young women, like at gigs, if you need me to be your uncle, and I must go and talk to my uncle. He is over there. He is
Mhm.
the beardy guy in the corner. Let me be your uncle. And there's a number of, you know, women and LGBTQ folks that I've gotten to know in the scene who know that I will, you know, at least stand in front of somebody for them. And anybody watching this, you don't need to ask me. If you're in a situation like that and I'm in the crowd, I'm your uncle, I'm your dad, whatever you need to keep somebody away from you. Um, Look, I think for me, I'm still learning this. I'm still having my eyes opened to some of the negative realities, but it's something I want to learn more about, be better, and you know, at the end of it, the victims of misogyny and sexual assault, they're not the ones that need to change anything about themselves. It's, you know, I'm the parent of two teenagers. You know, my belief has always been the way that we tackle this is not by telling our daughters to be more careful, but to
Yeah,
raise better sons. And
exactly.
you know, that's got to be where it starts from.
No, 100%. And I think that being even able to acknowledge that in a way, and that is a form of protest, because we have all said that we are not going to tolerate these things, and there has been several instances where I have seen people adopt a new friend for a night because they haven't got their friends, or they've lost their friends, or maybe seen someone who has maybe had a bit too much to drink and they're on their own. And being able to support people around you every way of life is always going to be good. You will never ever have any downfall in doing that. And a lot of the time it can be something as simple as being like, hey, like, are you okay? Like, are you all right? And they could come back and say, yeah, I'm completely sweet, but like, thank you for checking in. But at least you have done that, because there could be a time where you do check in and someone goes, no, can you help me? And I think that especially with things like music where people are moshing and they're dancing and that kind of thing, and there's drink involved and things like that, it almost kind of hosts an atmosphere that unfortunately you do see things like this happening. And I just think that by challenging the people around us to do better and to improve how they go about and to improve their attitudes and to work to kind of almost retrain the ingrained misogyny that is in our society, and to put your foot down and to say that you won't stand for it, I think that that is all we can really do. And that is going to challenge these things. It's going to make it easier. So I think that just that in a way is always going to be positive. Um,
Well, I was going to say thank you for taking us through this, because in some respects this is kind of like, you know, learning 101, because again, straight white middle-aged middle class male doesn't see this. So I wanted to move on to talk to you about your creative process. In particular, where do songs usually begin for you? Is it in a feeling, a particular sound, a lyric, an image? How does it work for you?
yeah, so I kind of what I vaguely touched on before, that with music to me is inherently emotional and it's driven by emotion. And a lot of the time that I write a song, it is sometimes to help me deal with difficult situations that I've been through, whether it's an issue with a friend or maybe an issue with a colleague, or maybe even an issue with a partner and family, anything. It's a lot of it is to not only help me to process it, but also to kind of challenge my way through that, because a lot of the time I'll find that when I write music, I'll go into it with an idea in my head of kind of where I'm going towards and an aim in a way. And a lot of the time it ends up being a completely different song to what I have initially kind of gone for. Um, I think a good example for this is there is this fantastic project going about at the moment by Cormac Neeson and California Irish of the Old Town. And a lot of the basis of it is that there was a song made by AI that was given a platform onto local radio stations. And it really, really, really kind of challenged me in a way to think about. I know that that angers me and I know that that pisses me off and it peeves me, but being able to pinpoint like what it was something that I find quite difficult. And I wrote a piece this morning for NuMuze as well, and kind of talked about it briefly in that. And I think what angers me most about it is that AI in the use of music is a thief, and it steals. It is a robber. It steals opportunities and it steals time and it steals resources away from musicians who have completely put their entire person into their art. And you can really lose yourself as a musician sometimes, because it's not an industry that is always going to be uplifting, and you will not see progress for a lot of it. And you will be stuck at crossroads and you have no idea which direction you're aiming for. And a lot of that it comes from a lot of personal struggle. And I think that to be able to use, in a sense, a robot to try and replicate the thing that makes music music, which is human emotion and human experience, really disgusted me to see that they were giving that a platform. And when I went to write the song about it, I had listened to California Irish's, I'd listened to Charlie's version, I'd listened to Eva Rowan's version, and they were so heartfelt and beautiful and all so distinct and different. And I knew that I did obviously want to write about AI, and I started with this song, and it was just a down-tuned my guitar to open C, and I was just strumming along, and it just wasn't sticking. And I try this thing, and it was something that Dara Tibbs told me to do one time in the studio, and it's something that I think it can be carried throughout anything, and it's think on it, and if in 7 minutes you still, I think it is 7 minutes, you still don't feel that way, then scrap it, because if it was meant to be, it'll stick. And I was really struggling to kind of put a reason to the song because it felt very disconnected, and I wanted the song to be something that was me, and it was my opinions and my thoughts. Especially with a topic like this, is something that I am passionate about, so I really tried. And I'd gone about it trying to write about how much I hated AI and it's stolen from music and all this kind of thing. And I ended up writing a song about how I am, I don't want to say inherently selfish, but I think as humans we all are a little bit. And I am a chronic overthinker, and I spend a lot of my time in my own head and a lot of my time in my own mind and my own brain thinking things over and thinking how I feel about different scenarios or different people. And a lot of my music is written about that. And sometimes I do kind of feel selfish in a way because I'm just constantly talking about myself and putting my thoughts on paper. And I actually ended up realizing that it's a privilege to be able to do that. And I might overthink, and I might wear my heart on my sleeve, and I might put my opinion in front of everyone that I've ever met, but at least I have an opinion, and at least that I have the facility to be able to think independently and to create and make music. And even if it's not always good, I can still create something that I'm personally proud of. And I wrote a line in the song that was call me a mindless fool, but at least I'm a fool with a mind. And I know for a lot of people that doing music is sometimes frowned upon because it's not a very consistent income, and it's not maybe what people think is academically driven or professional. But I don't think people realize that music is putting everything you have in front of an audience and basically asking them to listen. And I think that it is hard sometimes when musicians kind of have to try and navigate life. And I've been called a mindless fool or of just a fool in general before for putting so much of my time and my effort onto this, because it's maybe not something that other people value as much as I do. But again, at least I am a fool with a mind. At least that I have my head to think and make and create and pursue in a way that something like AI will not ever be able to truly replicate. And I think that the process of that is normally how it goes for me, that I'll go in with an intention, and then it'll get 180'd, and then it'll get 360'd, and then 180 back again, and then scrapped, or just keep it going. And it's never really a consistent process of that. I come up with like a guitar riff or something like that. It's usually I have what I want to write in my head, and then lyrics will start coming, and then I'll figure out usually what I think sounds good with the melody that I have. And I am quite lyrically driven in the way I write. I usually do focus a lot on that side of things, and something I've tried to challenge recently, because I um want to be able to create music that's not one genre or one pinpointed kind of style. I want to be able to kind of try everything and see what sticks and see what I like. And if I like them all, then I keep doing them all. So it normally is a case of lyrics and that kind of thing. And then it just comes and flows out. And it's, as the more that I get into it, it gets deeper and deeper into the meaning. And then I figure out what it is I'm actually writing about.
That's really cool. I hadn't realized that the resurgence of the variants of the old town were coming from California Irish.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard Charlie's version. I think I've heard at least one other version, and very much support that as an idea. I will say that I am a huge advocate for AI.
Mhm,
I love what it can do for me in my day job in IT.
mhm.
It can automate stuff, it can take away a lot of the tediousness of some of the tasks I have to do. I do not want it making my music. I do not want it making my art. I do not want it writing books or poetry or plays, and screenplays. I I think we're going to eventually have to accept it in visual stuff like, special effects. Uh But yeah, we've gotta fight back as best we can against doing creative things that are human, that are at the soul and root of our humanity.
Yeah.
Um, and you've articulated so much of that really, really beautifully.
Thank
Um,
you.
we've talked on and off throughout this and on other occasions about, you know, career struggles and breakthroughs, and I was wondering if you could talk me through, was there a moment when, you seriously considered walking away from music, and what it was that kept you going?
Yeah, 100%. It's happened to me quite a few times. I I have ADHD, and I feel like if you know me, everyone knows that I do. Um, and I have a chronic perfectionism sometimes when it comes to the things that I do create. So things like music and things like um writing and things like interviews and the way that I speak to people. And I am unfortunately one of those people where if I'm not immediately good at something and if I don't get an instant gratification from it, then a lot of the time I will either give up or put it on a standstill. And um after leaving the band and leaving Cairo Station, I, for no one's fault but my own, felt very just drained musically. And I had realized that a lot of the time with music, if I'm writing music just to write music, I'm doing something wrong. And if I'm creating just for the purpose of having a song, I'm doing it wrong. I want to write when I have inspiration to write, and I want to create when I have inspiration to create. And I find that when I have a certain particular amount of pressure, that I struggle, and I have had, after that period, I went through quite tough time, and there was so much happening that I wanted to write about, but when I sat and looked at a guitar, it I just had no creative spark to kind of go on and do that. And I was sitting strumming aimlessly for hours, and there was nothing there. There was just a blockade in my mind. And it's really quite demeaning when that you feel like that, because it makes you kind of feel that you're not necessary, or you're not meant to be doing this, or that it's not something that comes to you naturally, then you shouldn't do it. But after a while of a lot of growth and learning of myself, I kind of realized that there's no point in putting myself down and being so hard on myself for something like that. Like I was saying to Robert that I recently went back to camogie after taking a break for 3 years, because near the end of it I felt completely and utterly drained, and I wasn't doing it because I liked it anymore. I was doing it because I didn't want to let other people down, and I didn't want to let my dad down and these kind of things. But because of as a result of that, I had burnt out every single ounce of joy out of camogie, and I really fell out of love with it a little bit. And I think that it was quite easy for me to walk away from that because there was nothing tying it to me anymore. So then when I came back completely differently, and a completely different mindset and as a completely different person, and have re-sparked a new type of joy for camogie. Um, and it's been tough getting back, but if I can have that opinion for something like a sport, I should be able to have that opinion on something like music, because music is my mind. It's coming from my head and it's always going to be there. There's someone revving their engine down the road there. Apologies. But um, it comes from my head. It comes from my mind. So if I can go and leave camogie and come back to it with a new sense of joy, I should be able to do that for myself and do that for the way that I go about music. And I think that as well, especially in Belfast, we have this habit that, don't get me wrong, I am a victim of. Sometimes, well, I do it. I'm a habit haver, um, of we don't buy tickets to gigs in advance, and we buy tickets very last minute. And as much as an audience member, that is kind of a shame when a gig gets pulled and that kind of stuff. You know that there'll be another. But for a band, that is wasted time, that is wasted money, that is, they're going out there after putting their everything into a song and being the most vulnerable that they can, and by placing their thoughts on a stage. And it really can be quite demeaning sometimes when you play a gig and there's people talking over your songs, and there's people who are kind of using that as a time to maybe go outside, or maybe that there is only 5 people in that room. And I think that we have so many talented musicians that have experienced this, and as someone now who works for a company that is fortunate enough to be able to put on gigs and to host local artists, it even hurts seeing that happen, because you see how excited people are and how important it is for them to have that. And I don't think that people realize how important it is to see people and to see people in front of you. And I remember um I played a gig with Charlie Hanlon a couple months ago, and it was my first gig I'd ever done that was completely just me. I was on my own, and I felt prepared, but I got up on stage and it was a completely different ballgame, something that I wasn't used to. I hadn't done it in a while. It was just me on my own. There was no one behind me for support. It was just me doing what I can and putting myself out there. And I came out feeling a bit stumped and feeling like there was not really any point of doing that if I didn't enjoy it. And I felt kind of horrible afterwards. And I remember one thing that Charlie had said to me was that the greatest compliment you can take from a crowd is silence. And if someone's quiet and they're listening to you, then you're obviously doing something right. And that helped boost me a little bit. And I have a song that is recorded currently that I have hymned and hawed about and been so overly um kind of perfectionist with it. But I think it's just because I want it to come out when it feels right, and I want to come back to it when it feels right. And at this current moment in time, I'm enjoying writing, but I'm also enjoying working hand in hand with artists. Um, but it really can be quite stumping when things like that happen and when you do feel quite demeaned. And I don't think there was ever a part of me that would never have ever gone back to it. But I think that a lot of the way that I came back to it was by seeing the people around me and seeing how passionate they are for their own project and seeing how encouraging they are to other people's projects. And if it wasn't for the people around me, I probably could have walked away from it and never came back. But instead, I've chosen to just do it in a way that is mine and do it in a way that reclaim it in a way. Um, but it comes from support, and it comes from seeing people that inspire you around you and realizing that it is there if you want it. You just have to put a bit of work and a bit of time into it. Um, but yeah, a lot of it is just from having a really great group of friends, but also great community that is within the scene at the moment.
There are so many pieces I'd love to pick up
Yeah.
on this. The first one that comes to mind is I wasn't able to get to that show with yourself and Charlie, and I regret it, and hearing you describe it now, I regret it even more not being there. Um, but what you're saying, and I've talked this through with so many people locally on the scene, and I'm seeing it at a wider scale as well. That promoters are doing so much to try and sell tickets, and then on the night of the show, like hanging out the door, hoping that there are going to be people there, and it not always being that. Like, I am not a professional promoter, despite what Ben Graves believes I should be. Uh, uh, but I I've got the feature length concert movie Homecoming, which I'm plugging shamelessly because I'm trying to sell tickets to offset even a fraction of the cost of what it cost to make it. And at one stage, like, I was doing everything I can to promote it, and I called up the wonderful people at Accidental Theatre and said, like, okay, tell me how many tickets we've sold. And they went, 4. Other You're not even, like, missing a 0 off the end there. No, and I'm like, I've done this before. Last January, I filmed put a premiere together for a film I made and a film from one of my kids, and up until the morning of the show, we didn't know how many people were gonna be in that room. Thankfully, lots of people turned up to support us and bought tickets on the door.
Yeah.
But it would have given my indigestion such a break, just to,
Yeah.
like, know that people were, and I also say up until the end of July, we're doing, early bird tickets of just £8 to get in. After that, they go up to £12 online, and if you want to buy them on the day, and this is trying to discourage people from buying them on the day, buy them in advance. On the door, they're gonna be £15.
Yeah.
Buy them in advance,
Yeah.
save my heartache, save my indigestion, come along and do it. Um, but I, at this stage, would normally go into talking to you about the local scene and the sense of community, and there were a few questions I wanted to ask you there, but a lot of what we've already discussed would just simply be retreading that ground. So
Yeah.
there's one thing I wanted to kind of ask you, and I ask it of a lot of people. Is there an unsung hero on the scene at the moment that doesn't get the credit they deserve, and we should be aware of their existence, supporting them, and being thankful for them being around?
Um, I recently had quite a similar question that I'd asked of a brilliant band from Dublin called Capasia, and we had a really great conversation, and by the end of it, kind of just felt like we were talking as friends in a way. And I kind of asked them, "Is there someone that you would hate to go on scene?" And in my mind, I had asked that question thinking a band that you didn't think got enough recognition or an artist that you didn't think got enough recognition, but they instead took that in a way more beautiful way of someone who isn't appreciated or unseen. And a lot of what they were saying was the people that you don't even realize are working behind closed doors. So your sound guy and your light technician and the bar staff and the bouncers and the managers and that kind of thing, because a lot of the facilities that we get to put on music are in places that are bars, and they are in places that are what do you call it? Live music venues that serve alcohol and that kind of stuff. So we I don't think have enough appreciation for the people who are making that happen, and even as artists, I don't think have enough appreciation for the people that are making that happen. The videographers such as yourself, the photographers that you're getting your photos off, the guitar techs who are restringing your guitar and handing you your things, the sound technician that is there out of their own time to make sure that you have a good night, the bar staff who are serving you drinks and making you feel happy, basically, the people who are working the merch stand, and the gigs would not happen without these people. They would not be going on if you didn't have even a fraction of those people. And I think that a lot of the time, I have this kind of notion that quite similar to like how people judge how like let's say you're on a date and you judge how someone treats the waiter and you judge how that I have this same notion but with how people treat the sound guy, and if you're disrespectful to a sound person or and you make that don't appreciate all they do and you don't thank them with basic courtesy, I that completely changes my view of musicians in general, because if it's not for that song guy, you're going to sound terrible on stage that night, and that is the person who's making your gig go ahead. So I would really say just the people that you don't see, the people that you are behind those closed doors, and the people that are standing behind those cameras, and the people that are doing these things, and the secret people that walk about that you don't really see, like the promoters and the people who are working hands-on with the music scene, because they are doing so much work, so much heavy lifting for a scene that isn't always appreciative of them. And even something as simple as like the venues that we go to, I feel like it's wrong to not mention the OEM Music Centre, because there's not another place in Belfast that I think is so encouraging to younger musicians the same way that it is to older musicians, and is also so prepared to always be at the kind of back seat of any musician that needs them. And the people that kind of like are running that place currently have made so many musicians have found ease in their life, and taking that weight off their backs is the reason why we all go to gigs, and because we enjoy seeing these musicians, and having support like that, it does such wonders for a person, especially if you're young or you're just starting out and that kind of thing. You need to feel encouraged and you need to feel supported, and if you don't feel that, then it's really easy to just let go of it. But I just think the people that go on scene that we don't appreciate enough and we don't kind of even see enough, because they are kind of hidden in a way, but I think that they need applauded in so many ways, because it is the reason that our little music scene is thriving is because of those people. And don't get me wrong, I know that so many musicians work very, very hard, and there is a lot of recognition that has to be given to them. But I think that it's kind of easier to feel appreciated when you're on stage, because people are clapping for you and they're cheering for you and they're telling you that you did well, but no one's telling the sound person at the end of the night that they did a good job and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think just things like that are need to be appreciated a bit more.
Well, once again, you've given a kind of near encyclopedic answer to, what, to a question, and again, there's so many things we could pick out of this. I think hardly an episode of this podcast has gone by without somebody wanting to give thanks to the OES Center. Because yeah, again, fantastic. Like everybody I've met through there are just wonderful. They're so dedicated and so hardworking. I, you know, at this stage, having hung around and been tolerated around the scene for so long, I've gotten to know some of the lighting techs, some of the sound folks, and every single one of them are, yeah, I love when a band says, we got 2 more songs before we go. Want to thank the bar staff, want to thank the light guys, want to thank the sound man. And I really appreciate that. And, like I said, I've gotten a little bit more insight into it of late, but for your average audience member to have that understanding that there's more that goes into this than what you see on stage. I think the biggest one I've ever seen of this, or like the kind of taken to its natural conclusion, was I went to see Hosier in the whatever the SSE Arenas is called today. They're like kind of a couple of Decembers ago. And so there comes like the point, second last song, I'd like to thank, and goes through the band, goes through, and it just goes on and on, and there's very much a point to it. Like basically, as he's talking, so like on the screens behind me are the names of all the truck drivers and the people that do the catering, and at that level, when you're putting on like a huge international tour, the point he's making is that, yeah, you're coming here to see me, but
Yeah.
I don't go on stage without all the support for this.
Mhm.
And even at the other end of the scale, whether you're on the stage at Voodoo or the Oh Yeah, it's never just the musicians.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I think we need to remember that. And I do love, that anecdote. I don't know if it's true, but when you hear it given names, there's the story about Muhammad Ali being at a lunch, and the guy that wanted to do business with him is absolutely loving and respectful to Ali, but
Mhm.
is really terribly rude to waiting staff.
Mhm.
And Ali's alleged response was, "No, we're not going to do business because the only reason you're being polite to me is that you want something from me. If you had total power over me, you'd act like you're acting to the serving staff."
Yeah.
And
No,
it also
completely.
touches a personal point for me that always, always be kind to the people that serve you in restaurants and cafes. It's a tough job. Um, and in the same way that I will expand that to to lighting folk and everybody else that makes a show happen. There's a lot of hard work that you don't necessarily see on stage.
Yeah. No, definitely. And like something as well that has stood out to me more in recent years than anywhere else. But um I think that when it gets to a certain point of music and you are starting to see those successions and you're starting to have regular fans who are coming and attending your shows, I think that for someone who has been a musician and has worked with musicians and has watched musicians, something that I find incredibly, incredibly important and something that I really enjoy seeing is the treatment of fans and the treatment of those regular kind of gig goers that are huge fans of your music. And I think that there is almost a culture in a way of Irish music at the moment where a lot of bands kind of have a persona on stage and they have this kind of cool guy act nailed, and they come off the stage and they just go and they do whatever. But something that really stands out to me is when musicians come down and there is people that have paid to see them and are fans of their music and fans of what they do, and they make an effort to talk to them and they make an effort to interact with them and they make an effort to treat them like people, not just treat them like people who are fans of themselves. And as much as I do understand that the infamous Chapple Roan quote that she said that she isn't into, like, no one is entitled to her time, and I 100% agree to that. But at the same time, the fans are really the center of why musicians make it big. It's because you have listeners and appreciative people who are coming and listening to your gigs and are watching your gigs and paying hundreds of pounds for tickets. And if you can't treat those people with a basic amount of respect, then you are doing music for the wrong reasons, and 100%. And there is almost a humbleness to certain musicians in the scene at the moment where there is those interactions with fans and they do go and they talk to people. And one of the things, even for myself, I went to see Inhaler at Fairview Park, or not Fairview, at St. Anne's Park, and the opening act was Gurriers, and quite different vibes. Gurriers and Inhaler, wouldn't say they're very, very similar at all. And I walked in and I was giving it absolute stocks because I absolutely adore that band. They're such a fantastic group of musicians and they have a great stage presence, and it was just so nice to see them on a stage of that scale and supporting a band like Inhaler. And afterwards we were walking to get a drink, and we not only came across and were able to speak to Charlie, who is the bassist of Careers, but also talk to the lads from Blossoms who were walking past us at the same time. And they all were just so kind and so appreciative that they had been stopped, and it wasn't a case of we were asking for photos or anything like that. And don't get me wrong, I did eventually ask Charlie for a photo, but it was only because I'd had previously had a photo with him, and I was like, "Oh, I kinda wanna have another one," and he was like, of course," but he sat and he talked about Belfast, and he talked about venues that he enjoyed, and he asked if I was at those venues, and he asked if I've seen anyone else, and just that, rapport that artists can build with a fan base is what makes music as a fan so special. So having that level of humbleness to come and to talk and to interact with people and to kind of create a dynamic between that, I think that's so incredibly important. And I think that it's something that needs to be at the forefront of your music, that if you're doing it because you enjoy it, you should be able to thank the people that are there listening to you consistently. And I think it's definitely something that's more applicable on a larger scale, when a band has kind of been doing very well and are quite successful, but it's nothing that you can't start now, you know?
I have feelings about this because, like, I can understand where Chapple is coming from because the way that, well, I think music has always worked, since we've been putting people's faces on vinyl covers, that we feel that we know them, we feel that they are singing to us. There's an emotional connection. The age of social media now means that not only can they as artists broadcast to us, but we can reach out and talk straight back to them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good things in that, but I can only imagine that for somebody at that level of fame, that it can be very dangerously wearying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, you may have, spent a lot of money on your ticket, but again, does it give you a right to a portion of that person's life? Like, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, I
Definitely.
love when, my interaction with artists where they're happy to see me, they know me. Um, I try to make a point of, if I turn up to a gig a little bit early to get set up, I try not to hassle the artist because, as I always say, I'm here doing a hobby. You're actually out there performing. You're doing your day job, and um, I think it's very easy to say, yeah, as artists, you have to give, to the fans. I think being respectful is great,
Yeah.
but the idea that fans own your time and own your headspace is um probably easier to deal with at the lower end of the scalability of fame. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's something I'd like to think about more.
Yeah.
Shall we progress on to your future plans and ambitions?
Yeah.
Um, are there particular collaborations with people or in at venues or particular organizations that you haven't yet done, but are on kind of your bucket list of stuff you want to do?
Ooh, I am really enjoying uh working at the moment for NuMuze. I really have to say that as much as I have a lot of futuristic endeavors, um, I'm just really enjoying being able to put a lot of time and effort into uplifting the acts that are around us and the people that are around us and that kind of thing. And I would love to progress with that slowly. And I think that, like, I've been allowed the creative freedom to do something like that, as in, I have been able to do Zoom interviews with bands and create kind of a platform that is so encouraging in a way. And I have recently started to focus a lot on my writing and that kind of stuff and what it is that I'm putting out there for people to read. And I think I, as I stated before, that perfectionist in me kind of stunted my way of writing and the way that I felt that I had to almost be academic in a way with it. I felt that I had to have statistics and research and that kind of thing because I was just thinking, who wants to listen to me speak about myself? But after having a lot of conversations with people around me, I've been told that my writing is better when I'm speaking from my heart and speaking from myself. And I do want to continue doing that, to write in a way that feels freeing and in a way that is not only beneficial for myself, but beneficial for other people to read. And it might either help or assist or just be an enjoyable read. Um, I'm loving writing at the moment. I'm doing a lot of it. I really had a break from music for a while there after doing a recording and then playing that gig with Charlie, where I did feel a bit kind of lost in a way. And I put a lot of stuff on a standstill, and I was quite disconnected from that area of my life. But I also was trying to graduate, so that did take quite a good amount of my time. And then I just kind of gotten quite deep into the NuMuze stuff as well as working, so I got a bit caught up in a lot of things. But I really, towards the end of the summer, I want to take this as a break to kind of write and do what I need to do, and then get straight back into that and pursue maybe some form of a project or a band or that kind of thing. I miss having a band quite a lot, and I miss having that kind of dynamic of working a song and bringing something together and going, God, I love that, or no, that's crap, like scrap that. And I love just the honesty that comes from working with fellow musicians. So I would quite like to do something with that in a period of time. But for now, I'm just really enjoying writing, and I'm really enjoying kind of just doing my own thing. So yeah, I think that eventually I will come back to a stage, and I would love to eventually. I just need to work out what that looks like for me, if that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, so many of the conversations that you and I have had over the last, what, year and a half or so have been like, are you, getting a band? Are you like back on stage soon? And I've loved every time I've seen you perform. And whatever incarnation you come up on stage again, I want to be there for, and I'm going to be very happy to support that. So this is the part where I try to get people to be a little bit more philosophical and um, the give you a question that kind of centers around advice to others. So the question I have for you is, if you could go back, time travel, change one thing, what would it be? How would that change things for you? And how would you frame that as advice for the next generation of musicians coming behind you?
Um, I think a lot of what I would change comes from a sense of trust, and it comes from a trust within myself, but also a trust with the people who are around me. And I think that I would just do things because I want to do them, and do things because I enjoy them, instead of doing things because they feel necessary. And I think that putting your foot down, especially as a female musician, you should be allowed to say no, and you should be allowed to say, I don't want to take that gig, and you should be allowed to say, I don't want to do that song, or that I don't want to use this riff or something like that. And I think that maybe being a bit more firm in my boundaries as a musician, as well as trusting myself to be able to do that, and trusting myself that I'll be okay if I something happens, or I'll be all right if I fall in love out of love with music for a little bit. Um and yeah, I think that just having that kind of sense of self-awareness, and just that, again, trust in yourself, really helps, and it really pushes you forward, because there's going to be times in life that I've slowly figured out that people will come in your life and they will leave, and they will come in and they'll leave, and they'll come in and they'll leave. And there's one person that's always going to be there, and it's you, and it's your head. So to not love yourself, and to not appreciate yourself, and appreciate what you do, and be able to say, I am proud of myself, and to be able to say, I do like what I create, I do like what I make. I think that that's something that a lot of musicians struggle with, and they struggle to kind of have that appreciation of themselves, and how hard that they work, and how much that they do. So a bit of advice for a previous self would be to trust yourself, and to know that you've got this no matter what happens, and that you're gonna keep doing this either way. There's not anyone that can stop me from doing it, you know?
I love that.
But then
Um,
also, yeah,
um,
just sorry, cutting you off again.
go for it.
I was just gonna say that a bit of advice for the people around me and the people that are maybe coming into this scene is that you cannot love what you do and you cannot love others if you do not love yourself. So people forget that mental health and kind of your mind is equally as important as every other aspect of your life, and that you really should feel happiness, and people do deserve to feel happy in what they do and comfortable in what they do on stage and in the music that they make. And if people don't like it, that's a them problem. Just keep doing what you do, because you're never going to have 100% fans. There's always going to be someone that doesn't enjoy it or is trying to tear you down, and that person isn't as happy as you. I'll just say that.
Excellent, excellent. So the final portion of this is always where I turn it around to you and ask you to hit me with a question.
Yeah. Ever since I've known you, I don't think I've seen any person ever attend the most genres or the most different styles of artists ever. And it's so appreciative that you do that, because you're putting time and money and effort into other musicians, and it really doesn't go unknown. It's definitely a privilege to have you around. But as someone who does attend the most magnificent amount of gigs of anyone I've ever seen, and you do put everything into the local scene, how important do you think that either a crowd or a venue is for the outcome of the performance live set, between something like dynamic or rapport or how it goes or that kind of thing?
Ooh, as I was saying to somebody recently, I've managed to have developed the legend of omnipresence. The people believe I go to more shows than I actually do, and I love that. I'm just going to totally lean into that. Uh, I I could be out in this town 7 nights a week. I, on the other hand, actually love my family and I love being married, so I have to keep it to a certain minimum. So yeah,
Mhm.
I'm not at nearly as many gigs as I would like to be, as and or indeed as I could be. But even still, like breaking it down into questions around crowd versus venue. Well, obviously there's two parts to that. There's, first of all, is the crowd. Um, we need people to turn up to gigs. You and I have discussed this. It's become a running topic throughout this season, and I've banged on about it, and I don't know if I have an answer to it. But crowd that we have, and as we've discussed in this, it's not all beauty and fantasticness. There are some terrible people out there going to gigs. Thankfully, they're in the minority.
Mhm.
But one of the reasons that I have ended up in this scene as it is now is partly because I got fed up of spending large amounts of money going to big gigs where the majority of people are my age. And I was going to a gig one night in, it was the Limelight, and I heard the people a couple of rows behind me talking about that this was the first night out that they'd had since seeing so and so. And I went and I looked up on kind of my records, because I'm that kind of weird, and I realized that since they had seen one band like several months ago, I'd seen over 100 bands. And one of the reasons I've stayed away from those, those bigger shows is, yeah, they're expensive, but so many of the people that are my age are going out there. They're treating it as a big night out with their friends. Less about the music, more about them personally socializing, more about them getting very, very drunk.
Mhm.
There have been wonderful shows I have come so close to walking out of because there were people of my demographic who are spoiling it for everybody around them. And one of the things I love about so many of the shows that I'm concentrating on now is, like, going to Voodoo, 8 quid, 10 quid, top of the range, like you're spending 15 quid for a night out in, the Oh Yeah or whatever. Crowds that we're getting to them, once you get them in the door, are like I've had to deal with this with my own kids. Like I grew up in a society that was very alcohol focused,
Mhm.
whereas my kids are in the the top end of teenagerhood, and yeah, there's always going to be people that are messily drunk at gigs, but I'm seeing such a smaller amount of that, and and while we can whine about we need more people at gigs, the people that we're getting at gigs are absolutely the fillet. There are, they're there mostly for the music rather than like in the past it's been I'm going to go to drink and there will be music there. Now it's kind of turning around. I'm going for the music and oh they sell beer as well. That's nice.
Yeah.
Um and so yeah, I think we have, the quality of the crowd, like, and you talked about it, I've tried to discuss this with my kids, and they've just told me that it's just more evidence that I'm on the autism scale. Because if I go to a show, I'm there for the music. I don't want anybody talking, about, how well your cat is doing and, what the weather is. We're here for the music. Would
Yeah.
you please be quiet?
Yeah.
And it is respect for the artist, it's respect for the music. And largely at that club level in Belfast, we're seeing that. And if people want to do a natter with their friends, they go down to the back, they go to the bar.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, the quality of the crowds can really, um, change the feeling of a night. Uh, in terms of the venue, now there's obviously things about the size of the stage and the acoustics. So I've seen so many local bands are like, oh, it's a dream for us to play the Belfast Empire. There's so
Yeah.
many bands I've seen from coming in from across the world going, this is one of our favorite places. It's just got a fantastic ambiance. It's I can only imagine what it's like to stand on that stage. As a punter there, whether it's out for a night or there with a camera, it is a wonderful place to be in. I have so many films of bands who, when they're on stage at Mandela doing levels, inevitably going, "This is the biggest stage we've ever stood on." And so you can do all those sort of talks and like how that can either change the dynamic of the show. But what I find more interesting is there's an emotional relationship that I see that artists have with the venues. And so many people that I talk to, both on this podcast and just one to one, they're saying, well, this is our first time playing Voodoo and we are so excited. And there's that kind of creative memory of, well, I saw so and so play on here, and I saw, they were formational to my musical growth, and I get to stand on the same stage making my music, and it's those stories that I find really fascinating, and they're not immediately apparent to to me watching the bands, but obviously they're so significant, and it's only in forums like this where we get to talk about it,
Yeah.
or sometimes just like after a show, sometimes saying, "Wow, I saw Dangerous Dave, whoever on that stage like when I was 15, and um to be here and do this, um,
Yeah.
I." I love seeing how bands react in different places. Um, earlier today, I was looking at the the data visualization I keep on everything that I've filmed and put out there, and there are two bands that I've filmed more than any others. One of them is Gush, and the other one is Disorder. Both I've seen and filmed 7 times. The interesting thing with Disorder is that in the 7 times I've seen them, I've never seen them in the same place twice.
No way.
Yeah, I didn't
Right.
even realize this until today. I just kind of clicked on a couple of things on the graph. But oh, so like for example, I've seen Gush 7 times, but like 4 of those or 3 of them at least have been in the OES Center,
Mhm.
and with the disorder ones where there are different stages and different places, now that I started to think about it, I go, yeah, it really does impact on exactly the type of performance that they're giving. And, it's never a bad one, but, yeah, a different stage, can make that difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that fascinates me. I hadn't really thought an awful lot about it until you asked the question. And I think it's something that going forward I will be looking more towards.
Yeah. No, definitely. And like just like picking up on what you said there, like one of the nicest things I've been able to experience is playing the same stage that my nanny did. But the reason I was able to do that was because that venue has got a solid income and it's able to stay open and able to support gigs. But the only way for a venue to have a stable income and for them to be able to continue to put on music, because Belfast really doesn't have that many venues, is by going out there and not only buying tickets to the gigs you're planning on going to, but maybe dandering into a random gig on a Wednesday night and not intending to, but that's still money in someone's pocket that are putting that back into the music scene. So I think that I like definitely would just like to encourage anyone at all to just go out there and just go to that gig and buy that ticket, because you never know what's going to happen. I met all of my closest friends at a gig and I'd never met them all before, and we've now been friends for uphold of 4 years. So I think that you never really know what's going to happen unless you do it. So just go to that gig and buy your tickets, please.
That is wonderful advice. And you know what? I am going to say thank you, Cara, so much for coming on and talking with me. Your answers and the depth of your insights have been really interesting and illuminating. And I think everybody that's followed us this far is going to be as fascinated as I've been throughout this. I'm going to say once again, if you followed this far and you like what we're doing here, please hit the subscribe, hit the follow buttons on the appropriate places. Would be very, very grateful. And as I always sign off with this has been another handcrafted episode, and I will see you at the next gig. Thank you very much, and good
Thank
night.
you, ever